In the early hours of March 18, 1990, the Isabella Gardner Museum in Boston stood as a silent palace of art, its treasures vulnerable, while the city outside was alive with St. Patrick's Day celebrations. The guards on duty that night were 23-year-old Rick Abath and 25-year-old Randy Heston. Near the end of their shift, the routine was broken when fire alarms began to sound from several rooms. Abath conducted a patrol but found no signs of fire or smoke. Concluding it was a system malfunction, he returned to the security desk and disabled the entire alarm panel, an act that would have devastating consequences. Shortly after, at 1:24 a.m., a buzzer from a side entrance echoed through the quiet museum. On a security monitor, Abath saw two men dressed in police uniforms. They claimed to be responding to a report of a disturbance and demanded to be let in. Believing their story, Abath broke protocol and opened the door. Once inside, the two men's demeanor changed. They lured Abath away from the security desk, the location of the museum's only panic button. In an instant, they had him against a wall and in handcuffs. When his partner Heston arrived, he was quickly subdued in the same manner. The thieves revealed their true intent, wrapped the guards' heads in duct tape, and led them to the basement, where they were chained to pipes. With the guards neutralized, the thieves began their work. After a tense 13-minute wait, they moved to the second floor. As they approached the artwork, a proximity sensor beeped, which they promptly smashed. Their methods were brutal and crude. They ripped paintings from the walls and threw them onto the hard marble floor, the sound of shattering glass echoing through the grand hall. Using sharp blades, they savagely cut the canvases directly from their stretchers. They moved through multiple rooms, taking what they wanted. After 81 minutes, their operation was complete. They gathered the security tapes from the director's office to erase the evidence of their entry, walked out of the museum one last time, and vanished into the Boston night. 13 works were gone. The FBI valued the heist at $500 million, the largest private property theft in history. But the loss was more than monetary. They took Rembrandt's only seascape, the Storm on the Sea of Galilee. And Johannes Vermeer's The Concert, one of only 34 known paintings by the master, considered the most valuable stolen object in the world. The crude way they cut the canvases from their frames suggested they weren't art experts. In the aftermath of the heist, the FBI took control of a case that was already a phantom. The thieves had vanished, leaving behind a plundered museum and a near-total lack of evidence. From this void, they began to build a gallery of ghosts and suspects, chasing down every whisper in the Boston underworld. The investigation began, as it always does, with the people on the inside. Suspicion fell on Rick Abath, one of the two young guards on duty. His actions were puzzling. He had opened a side door shortly before the robbery and was the last person in a room where the motion detectors mysteriously failed to register the thieves. But after intense scrutiny, the FBI saw not a criminal mastermind, but a foolish young man who was simply too incompetent to have been involved. Investigators then turned their attention to the king of the Boston underworld, James Whitey Bulger. His deep connections with law enforcement could explain the authentic police uniforms used by the thieves. But Bulger, a man who profited from controlling all crime in his territory, denied any involvement, and the lead evaporated. A more curious lead was Brian McDevitt, a conman who had attempted a nearly identical art heist years earlier in New York. He had planned to use a disguise, handcuffs, and duct tape to steal a Rembrandt. The parallels were uncanny, but his fingerprints didn't match any at the scene, and with nothing more to go on, the FBI had to let him go. A far more promising theory came from a jailhouse source, the notorious art thief, Miles J. Connor Jr. He claimed the heist was organised by mobster Bobby Donati as a high-stakes bargaining chip to free his boss from prison. It was a motive that made perfect sense in the violent world of the Boston Mafia. But just a year after the robbery, Donati was brutally murdered in a gang war, taking his secrets with him. It was a tantalizing dead end. Acting on Connor's leads, the FBI investigated an antiques dealer named William P. Youngworth. In 1997, he brought a journalist to a dark Brooklyn warehouse and, under a flashlight, unfurled what appeared to be one of the stolen masterpieces. He offered to broker the art's return in exchange for immunity and Connor's freedom. But negotiations stalled. Paint chips he provided failed to match the stolen works, and when the FBI finally raided the warehouse, it was empty. The most significant break wouldn't come for decades. In 2013, the FBI announced with high confidence that they had identified the thieves as deceased members of a Dorchester-based gang. Their investigation zeroed in on an aging Connecticut mobster, Robert Gentile. The widow of another gangster swore her husband had given the paintings to Gentile for safekeeping before he died. The FBI raided Gentile's home and found a list of the stolen art with its black market value, but no paintings. A polygraph test indicated he was lying when he denied knowing anything. It was the closest the FBI had ever been, yet the art remained elusive, and Gentile maintained his silence until his death. More than 3 decades have now passed since the robbery. Today, inside the Isabella Gardner Museum, 13 empty frames still hang on the walls. They are a haunting memorial to what was lost, and a stubborn symbol of hope for what might one day return. A $10 million reward remains unclaimed, a final desperate plea for a truth that has become one of history's greatest unsolved mysteries. The heist is over, but the story has no end.